All right, technical session T-33, installing Windows. For this technical session, when we are done, you should be able to name the differences between installing and upgrading an operating system. Describe the difference between attended and unattended installations. Name key steps to install Windows, including the different ways to begin this process. Identify common pitfalls that can occur when installing Windows and how to solve them, and compare and contrast the upgrade requirements of Windows 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. Behavioral skills and mindsets we will be looking at will be persistence and communication, being able to work with a team, being able to effectively communicate with that team as well as our customers, and maintaining persistence when trying to troubleshoot and solve issues with regards to our systems. All right. When to do an installation versus an upgrade. Upgrading is nice, especially if it is a close proximity. Like if you're upgrading from Windows 7 to Windows 8 or 8 to 10, it's pretty easy. You kind of just, figure out what versions are available to you along the upgrade path, and you can go ahead and upgrade it. It goes ahead and migrates all your stuff across for you. You have a clean install when there is no OS present, or you don't necessarily want to go through all the jumps to get to where you need to be. And you don't really care if the files on there are saved or not. Maybe it's a computer you just received from somebody else and it has an older operating system. You want to go ahead and just jump to 10. You don't really mind what's on there, so you do a clean install. Repair installation, if you're having multiple issues, maybe you have viruses, malware, what have you, on your computer, and you've run antivirus, all that fun stuff, none of it seems to work, you can go ahead and do a repair install, which may solve a lot of those particular issues. Maybe you have an individual computer, but you're running multiple operating systems on it, like you've set up a Hackintosh or Linux, and you want to create a multi-boot environment where, depending on what it is you're going to be working on, you could boot either into Windows, Linux, or Microsoft Windows at any given time. Also, there is a remote network install where you could push out those versions across hundreds or thousands of computers at a particular time. Saves a lot of time. It's very efficient in larger environments, and you don't necessarily have to be on site or even next to that computer in order to accomplish this. Two types of installs you can do, or there's actually multiple, excuse me. You have the attended, which is where you're kind of just sitting down there with it. You're walking it through each step of the, of the process. I want it to install the operating system here. I want it to connect to the internet here. These are the features that I want. You're going to sit there every step of the way, answering those fun questions and letting the system know what it is, you want done. Unattended, basically there's pretty much little to no human intervention. Either you say, I don't care, please use the most frequently used settings for the computer and I will kind of fix it later, or you have a sysprep, which is like we were talking about earlier, where you have created an image where you say, these particular applications, we want these installed, these I do not want installed. Whatever, system user is using this one, they will not have access to these particular systems. Here's where you go to the internet, and on and on and on. These ports, I want these ports turned off so outside access could not get to them. And then once you have that image created, you can then push it out to however many systems you need to and just duplicate those settings one right after another. You don't need to be there. It's all preset. And basically every system that you push it to will be identical at that point. Then there's a remote install, which essentially, or RIS, allows for multiple network installations at a single time. So if you're pushing out a new upgraded version, going from Windows 8.1 to Windows 10, you've already got your security settings in place, but you have multiple groups, HR, accounting, operations, executive, sales, all these various groups are going to have different levels of access, different file requirements. You create these images, and then when the time comes, you can go ahead and just push all those images out at the same time. Everything's done in an unattended manner, and all is taken care of at that point if it is set up correctly. Questions so far? All right. There we go. Final checklist. Obviously, before you begin to install any particular operating system, you want to make sure you at least have the bare minimum requirements in order to run that operating system. Now, minimum does not mean optimal. Usually we'll have two sets of requirements when you're looking at it, where this is the bare minimum to get it to actually work. For it to work well, these are the settings you're going to need to use. They don't typically worry about the optimal settings for most of the operating systems, but you will need to know the bare minimum systems requirements for each one of these systems for Windows 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. Both the 32-bit and the 64-bit versions. Here's the first one for you. I highly suggest you make flashcards. If you do not know this stuff off the top of your head, make flashcards with regards to these. These questions come up a lot. For Windows 7, you need to have a 1 gigahertz processor, minimum. For the 32-bit version, you need 1 gigabyte of RAM, 2 gigabytes for 64-bit. You need a minimum 16 gigabytes of free storage for the 32 and 20 gigabytes of free storage for the 64. Also, for video, big one is DirectX 9 with WDDM 1.0 or higher driver. Also requires a DVD-ROM rather than a CD-ROM for the time, but that one will particularly come up. The main things they're looking for with regards to this. Whoa. Is processor, memory, hard space. That is the main things that they're looking for with regards to the upgrades. For Windows 7, any questions so far? All right. Windows 8 and 8.1. Requires processor 1 gigahertz with support for PAE, NX, and SSE. Now, PAE stands for Physical Address Extension, and it allows the x86 processor or 32-bit processor to access more than 4 gigabytes of physical RAM. The NX is the no execute feature or non-executable, and this allows the system to isolate particular files on the hard drive with regards to the operating system and say that they are not executable regardless. And then SSE is the, what is that? Streaming SIMD extensions. And that helps support the processor instruction set for PAE. But, so they're not going to ask you all those details about those particular things. That was just a little bit basic information for them. The main thing you'll need to know is they do need to be there, both versions. 1 gigahertz processor. Again, we're seeing the 1 gigabit of RAM for the 32-bit, 2 gigabytes of RAM for the 64-bit, 16 gigabytes of free space for the 32, 20 gigabytes for the 64. And again, it has the DirectX 9 as well. Any questions so far? Are we noticing a trend?
Yeah, it look like memory and disk space just aren't changing.
Pretty good. Also processor. The only difference in the processor is when you get to Windows 8, they add in the PAE, NX, and SSE. But it's still a 1 gigahertz processor. All right. Windows 10 should look relatively familiar here. And we are seeing 1 gigahertz processor. It doesn't require the PAE, NX, or SSE. Requires 1 gig for the 32, 2 gig for the 64, 16 gigabytes of storage for the 32, 20 gigabytes of storage for the 64. DirectX 9 also a requirement. So makes it a little easier for remembering. The big thing is the 32 versus 64, remembering the differences between those. Again, I still do recommend making flashcards. So these are numbers that you just remember off the top of your head. You don't have to think about it. And then for the Windows 8 version, you remember the PAE, NX, and SSE with regards to the processor. We good so far? Thumbs up. All right. We did just kind of go over this a little bit, but short answer, what seems to be the same? Okay. Processor, RAM, disk space, memory, processor, not applicable. Close on this one, but it was Windows 8 and 8.1, and the same requirements besides Windows 7, needing the PLS, NX, and SSE. That would be Windows 8, actually. 8 and 8.1 require that. But pretty good answers. RAM, storage, and CPU speed. Excellent. All right, boot methods for installing or upgrading. We have the old school way of the CD-ROM. traditional method, though I don't think of any common version of a operating system that could fit on a CD-ROM. It might be like the old floppy drives back in the day when you had games on like across 20 different discs, and it's like insert disc 2, insert disc 3, insert disc 4. That would take absolutely and utterly forever to update a operating system in that manner. So CD-ROM pretty much out of the game at this point. DVDs, you still see them from time to time, although we're starting to exceed the capacity of the DVD. We would have to have dual side, dual layer, I think, to just barely get all of Windows 10 on it at this point. So optical drives are kind of going by the wayside with regards to operating systems. Most common right now is going to be our flash drives, solid states, or USBs. That is going to be, for the most part, the most common way that you will load up an operating system. The other way in an enterprise environment would be a Pixie server, which is a pre-boot execution environment. And when you're setting up your boot order in your computer, you can set it to kind of go out and look for where the operating system is located. And you can give it the address of the Pixie server and go ahead, excuse me, and boot from that particular area. Other methods. We have NetBoot, which was developed by Apple. Allows you to be able to boot from a network location, utilizes your DHCP server in order to configure this. We will get into DHCP when we start talking about network devices and various servers. External hot swappable drives, like a optical drive, solid state, external, or an external hard drive as well. And again, when you're setting your boot order, you tell the system, look here first. Like you could set it up, look for USB first, then optical, then hard drive, you know, and then go to the internet if you can't find any of that stuff, or you can reverse it in any order you would choose. Now, in an enterprise environment, which one of these would you absolutely not want to turn on? If you're setting your boot order for a computer, which would you not want to have active?
External hot swappable.
Like a
flash drive.
Yes, like a flash drive. Because if you have that set before the hard drive or the network server, all sorts of nasty things can be executed on your hard drive and give them complete access. In fact, you would probably want to set up a non-executable on your USB drives, or no auto run, excuse me. Then the other way you can do it is utilizing internal hard drives while utilizing partitions. And typically those are created, you would create many of these partitions when you are initially installing the operating system on the hard drive and then telling the computer where to go look for it. And they would have a recovery partition on there, which would have a base level of the operating system, safe and secure, separated from the rest of the hard drive by a partition. So it would not be accessible unless you go into the recovery environment. Once you're in the recovery environment, if you got some bad malware or what have you, you can go to the recovery partition, pull out those files, reboot from a safe, to a safe environment, and try to recover your other files from that point. Questions so far? All right. So for the moment right now, you basically want to be able to identify these as key boot files and systems files, so that if you see them, you don't delete them by accident, because that would be extremely bad. But you want to have an idea of what they look like. And that would be boot manager, BCD, winload.exe, NTOS kernel, winresume for your boot files, your systems files, hal.dll, smss, exe, winlogon, exe, and lsass.exe. Questions so far? Yes, I would agree with you, Manuel. Don't run HAL. All right. Decisions to make during your installation: the size of the Windows partition. It will auto size it for you if you wish, but if you want, you can make it larger if you wish to store more application files in there as well during that time. You would need to set up your administrator account logins settings at that time. If you're using an image, again, all of this stuff could be preset so that you just push it out and everything is auto set for you at that point once you have a good image that you're going to work from. Network configuration, so the system knows where to go to talk to the internet, especially if you're operating off of Wi-Fi, something along those along that nature. And whether to migrate all your files from the previous version to the newer one, or if you're doing a clean install from that. Tool you would use for migration: user state migration tool or the Windows Easy Transfer. Questions so far? All right. Here is your essential upgrade path. I do recommend taking a picture of this, at least kind of having an idea. These are the additions that they have for each. And you will want to be aware of them so as not to become confused. If they say Windows 10 Ultimate, we know it doesn't exist. So you do want to kind of be familiar with each iteration. You don't need to know all the details about it. Just know, like for Windows 7, you have Starter, Home Basic, Home Premium, Professional, Enterprise, Ultimate. Those are all your options for that. 8, you have Pro, Enterprise, and RT. And then 10, Home, Pro, LTSB, and Education, Enterprise. So Marvin did send out the student pace version of this. Definitely want to take note of this slide so that you can make some quick flashcards for this, because unfortunately it does need to be memorized. All right, clean install basically comes down to starting from scratch. Ideally, we want to make sure that everything, the hardware we have set up is compatible and we have all the settings we need to be able to upgrade. And we want to do an inspection of the system before starting on the install to make sure we alleviate any other issues prior to doing the install. If no operating system is installed, you need to load up some bootable media via disk, external drive, what have you, and then follow the prompts as you're booted into it. If you already have an operating system installed, a bunch of files, all that fun stuff, movies, pictures, be aware if you do a clean install, it is going to wipe out all of that. It is not going to get migrated over. All files will be lost. So if that is something you're going to do, make backups of your files before you do that. And then once you have done your full install, you can go ahead and upgrade those files. If you have a 32-bit operating system and you want to move up to a 64, that's going to require you to do a clean install. But first you need to make sure the actual architecture is in place. So you have the proper amount of RAM, your processor can handle 64-bit, and have the proper amount of storage. Questions so far? All right. Quick quiz. Just 2 questions. A couple more answers come in. And we'll see. Can you upgrade from Windows 7 Home 64-bit to Windows 10 64-bit? Yes or no? Upgrade, not clean install. Don't everybody speak at once. No one?
I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna be
You're gonna
brave.
say no.
I'm gonna be brave.
You're gonna be brave. Again, don't be afraid of being wrong. If we're gonna get it wrong, much rather get it wrong here rather than get it wrong on the test. So, Will, you are correct, sir. Yes, you can upgrade from Windows 7 Home 64-bit to Windows 10 64-bit. And that is an upgrade, not a fresh install. So your files and everything would migrate with you. Can you upgrade from Windows 7 Home 32-bit to Windows 10 Home 64-bit?
I put no.
Yeah, I put no.
Correct. Because of the change in architecture, that would be a clean install so long as your processors can handle it. So you would have to back up your files and then re-upload your files once done. You've done this before without as an upgrade, not a clean install, Emmanuel? Or are you talking about the previous question? Gotcha. Just making sure I understood the context. All right. So yeah, because of the architecture change, you would need to do a clean install, backup files, and then once you've done your install, then you could reinstall your files. So that would be a clean install, not an upgrade. But pretty good. All right. Back on it. Nope, wrong one. No. There we go. All right, after the installation, what do we got to do? Kind of a checklist you kind of got to go through, especially on individual computers versus a network upgrade. Once you've moved up to a newer version of the operating system, you want to go through and run updates and load any third-party drivers that you may need with regards to printers, scanners, mouse and keyboards, Bluetooth headsets, what have you, so that it's able to talk to all the things that you have on there and need running, even internal applications. Set your time, date, region, language settings. Make sure it is set to the personal preference you have and location you are located in. Then you're going to go through and do the 5,000 Windows updates. It's probably going to be required if you have not installed it immediately and maybe waited about a week or two. Then you're going to need to properly format your boot drive. Verify that you have network access and put in any credentials required. If you need to for access, install all updates and service packs if that is authorized by the IT department for the enterprise settings, or if you want to go ahead and just get up to the most recent current version in personal use, go ahead and install all those service packs. Configure automatic updates. If you want it to do that for you, I think it is auto toggled right now for Windows 10. That is something, if you do not want it to do, you turn it off, which if you want time to be able to test any updates before you install them across the network, you definitely want to have that turned off. And so it will only do the install if it has been initiated by you. You want to go ahead and install any additional hardware that you have, the applications that you need, set up user accounts, and transfer their data from previous versions if this is an upgrade, and download any additional files that they may need if it is a clean install, and then turn whatever features on or off that you are going to need or do not want to be utilized. Questions so far? Did you guys have like a really big lunch or something? You're just very quiet. Everybody's quiet after the assessment.
Windows would do that to you.
Yeah, it does to me regularly. All right. Upgrade paths. Thankfully, so that we don't have to remember all of this stuff, although we probably do for the exam, they created Windows Upgrade Operating System Advisor to let us know, hey, based on the current operating system you have, here are your options that you can use to move forward to get to the operating system you want to get to. Sometimes it is a clean, immediate jump. You can go from 7 to 10. Sometimes it'll say, nope, you need to go from Vista to 7, then you can jump to 10 based on the version that you have. So you go through this, it'll run a system check on your system. It'll let you know if there's any compatibility issues, like you don't have enough storage space or what have you, or you're moving from a 32-bit version to a 64-bit version. So this is, these are things you need to be aware of, and it can give you recommendations on what exactly you're going to need to do before you upgrade so that you don't lose critical data, and kind of give you a heads up as to what's coming down the line. First seen in Vista, but it is available now through almost any other version, and you can download it through the Microsoft website. Questions so far? All right. What is it? The other version that they have currently is the Windows Anytime Upgrade. We'll kind of go through, check your system to make sure everything is compatible for your upgrades. Now, if you're going from Vista to Windows 7, here are the paths you can take. Marvin's giving out the T-session slides. Definitely want to take a snapshot of this particular one so that you have it handy. You can go from basic. From basic, you can go to 7 basic, premium, or ultimate. From premium, you can either go to premium or ultimate. You cannot go from premium down to basic. Business, you can only go to professional, enterprise, or ultimate. Enterprise, your only option is to go to enterprise, and ultimate, your only option is to go to ultimate. From Vista to 7. 7 to 8 breaks all this down. Again, recommend you taking a snapshot of the slide, working through it just to kind of have a pretty good idea as to how the upgrade paths work. Here it is again for Windows 8.1, the paths that you can take. So as you can see, for 8.1, there is no upgrade path from Vista. So you would need to move from Vista to 7 to be able to move to 8.1.
Does that make sense, everybody? Like the way why you can't jump? Does that make sense? As far as the upgrade goes, anybody having any reservations about the process? It's almost like there's no way that you can get from this to that. There's like it's too far of a jump, and it's a lot of things are going to be missing. So you have to go through. You got to follow the breadcrumbs. If you are Goldilocks, is that Goldilocks? Jack and Jill? Who had the breadcrumbs? I don't know.
Hansel and Gretel.
Hansel and Gretel. Yeah, man. I'm a
Kids
little
just
rusty.
taught from the beginning, you don't take food from strangers.
That's also the big thing. But then also you can't make that jump. It's like you need a bridge. And if it's stopping you from making these significant jumps from one operating system to the next. I just want to make sure everybody's grasping that concept.
Wait, so just to clarify, Windows Vista, I need to go back to see what Windows Vista had, but it has so much that it'll take a lot of work for it to just jump from Windows Vista to Windows 8. So
yeah,
something like that, right? Okay.
Something along those lines. It's just like, though you cannot make a direct jump, you can make intermediate jumps to get there. It just takes a little bit longer. So you can upgrade to 7. And it doesn't mean you have to register it. You just upgrade to 7, and then you get to 7, and then you're in a temporary period. And then from 7, the system files have now been established. Then you can move from 7 to 10.
Got it.
That allows that file migration to happen because such drastic changes have happened between Vista and say 8. It can't just immediately jump because the system wouldn't know how to talk to, each other. So, but you can talk to 7. So 7 is kind of that intermediate step to allow you to make it to that final path.
Capiche. Intermediate step makes more sense.
Yep. So here we go. Here's a pretty broken down to the Windows 7 Windows 10 path. 3, the big versions of it lets you know whether or not you can go there from these particular versions, jumping straight to it. Questions with regards to the upgrade path? All right. Troubleshooting installation problems. Typically, it is a smooth process, but every now and again, you run into some problems. You get a media error. Again, typically we don't use DVDs or CDs anymore, but stranger things have happened. Scratch DVD will give you that error. They do make CD, DVD polishers that can buff out a lot of that stuff. Or you just need to get a new version. of the media, because the key is what is important, not necessarily the drive that has all the actual information. Product key is your main thing that you need. If it's not able to see your RAID array, basically for the most part, that's a driver issue. You get the upgraded drivers on the newer system, and you're back in business. No boot device present. It's either a bad disk or drive, or you have not gone into your BIOS yet to actually tell it to look for those drives first. It could be set to go to hard drive, and then you have an older version there and it's not looking in the right place for it. You need to reconfigure which drives it's going to look for. Hardware detection error, check the compatibility in BIOS for that particular hardware. Make sure that that particular motherboard will work with that type of hardware, and if need be, download the relevant drivers to make it function. Any lockups, unfortunately, you got to unplug it, turn it back on, boot up the setup, rerun the install, and then it will restart automatically after that point. Installation of operating systems, thankfully, is not as risky or dangerous as flashing the BIOS. If there's a problem with the install, typically you just start over and it's okay. Unlike the BIOS, where if it gets interrupted in process, you now own a fancy new paperweight. All right. Kind of a refresher here. Kind of breaks everything down into one slide, makes it a little nice to read. Windows 7, various versions. Keeping an eye on this section right here, your upgrade path. That almost worked out. Pretty much the same. Windows 8, 8.1 stays in the same parameters, 32, 64, but the only difference is that PAE, NX, and SSE2 on the processor, but your memory and storage and processor requirements beyond that remain the same. Then finally, for Windows 10, same requirements. That would conclude our introduction to the installation of Windows. Does anybody have any additional questions?
Yeah, I have questions. I just need to a little bit clarification.
Okay.
The difference between the netboot and PXT. Is there any difference between them?
Between what?
Between netboot.
Oh,
and,
netboot, network boot.
Yeah, network.
And a Pixie server.
Yeah.
Yes, but with regards to the exam, they view them very similarly.
Okay.
So, a Pixie server is more of a deployment method, where the network boot is where it will go to operate from.
Okay, thank you.
So the Pixie server is used to push the version out to the various drives, and then network boot is where they will, you tell the systems to go there and look for it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? All right.